He was just a shepherd, a man on the run, living a quiet life far from the echoes of his past. Moses led his father-in-law's flock across the barren wilderness, the sun beating down on his weathered face. He knew the land, every rock, every thorny bush. But on this day, on the slopes of Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, he saw something that stopped him in his tracks. A bush was ablaze, yet it was not consumed. The flames danced and flickered, licking the leaves, but the branches remained green and whole. It was a fire that burned with an otherworldly light, a sight both beautiful and terrifying. Curiosity pulled him closer, his staff held tight in his hand. As he drew near, a voice boomed from within the flames, a voice that was both thunderous and intimate, a voice that knew his name. "Moses! Moses!"
The ground beneath his feet suddenly felt sacred. He answered, "Here I am."
With God's promise echoing in his heart, Moses returned to the land of his birth, the land of his people's bondage. He walked into the opulent courts of Pharaoh, a place of immense power. Pagan gods carved from stone, golden statues and idols. He was no longer a prince of Egypt, a humble shepherd, Aaron at his side, his wooden staff in his hand. He stood before the most powerful man on earth. The air was thick with tension. Moses took a deep breath. He delivered the message, voice clear and steady.
"Thus says the Lord, let my people go."
Pharaoh's face hardened. He looked down from his throne, scornful and disbelieving. Who was this Lord? Egypt had its own gods, the sun, the river, the sky. This shepherd's God was nothing to him. Pharaoh's heart was like a stone. He performed a sign, throwing his staff to the ground. The staff transformed into a slithering serpent. Pharaoh's magicians mimicked the miracle. For a moment, a stalemate, a battle of wills. Moses' serpent, born of divine power, consumed the magician's serpents, a clear sign of true authority. Because Pharaoh's heart was a fortress of pride, God began to dismantle Egypt piece by piece. The plagues were not random, targeted assaults on Egypt's gods. First blow, the Nile. Aaron struck the water with his staff, the river turned to blood. The fish died, people could not drink. Next, swarms, frogs. Frogs covered every inch of the land. Frogs invaded homes, beds, and ovens. Then gnats rose from the dust. Thick swarms of flies descended upon the Egyptians. But in Goshen, there were no flies. God drew a clear line between his people and their oppressors. The land groaned under God's judgment. A terrible pestilence killed livestock in the fields. Painful boils afflicted the Egyptian people, from servants to magicians. A hailstorm mingled with fire rained down from the sky. Crops were destroyed and everything shattered. Then came the locusts, a living cloud descending on the land. Egypt became a desolate wasteland, its strength broken and pride humbled. The ninth plague. Profound, palpable darkness fell over Egypt. A blackness so thick it could be felt. For 3 days, no one could see their hand in front of their face. In Goshen, however, the Israelites had light. They were a beacon of hope in a land consumed by divine shadow, waiting for the final act of their deliverance. As the shadow of the final plague loomed, God gave Moses specific instructions for a sacred meal. This was the Passover. Each Israelite family was to take a perfect, unblemished lamb. They were to paint the blood on the left doorpost, on the right, on the lintel of their homes. This blood was not a mere symbol. It was a sign of faith, a mark of protection against the angel of death. Inside their homes, the Israelites ate the roasted lamb in haste. They were dressed not for a leisurely meal, but for a journey. Their cloaks were tucked into their belts, their sandals were on their feet, and their staffs were in their hands. They ate with unleavened bread, for there was no time to let it rise. A mark of protection. The angel of death would pass through the land of Egypt that night. The Lord saw the blood and passed over them. A great cry rose up from every Egyptian home, a wail of anguish and despair, from the grandest palace to the humblest dwelling. The firstborn son of every Egyptian family was struck down, from the heir of Pharaoh on his throne to the child of the prisoner in the dungeon. The gods of Egypt offered no protection. The power of Pharaoh was utterly broken. They were safe behind the blood-stained doors. They were to be ready at a moment's notice to leave behind 400 years of slavery. The Egyptians, fearing they would all die, urged the Israelites to leave quickly. "Go! Leave my people!" They pressed upon them silver, gold, and clothing. After centuries of toil, the people of Israel walked out of Egypt not as fleeing slaves, but as a liberated nation, laden with the wealth of their former masters. The long night of slavery was over, and the dawn of freedom was about to break and step into the promise of freedom. Their freedom seemed short-lived. As the Israelites journeyed, the sound of thundering chariots grew behind them. Pharaoh, his heart hardened one final time, had changed his mind. He mustered his entire army, his finest chariots, horsemen, and he pursued them. The Israelites found themselves trapped, the Red Sea before them, and the most formidable army on earth closing in behind. Fear gripped their hearts, and they cried out to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die?" Moses, standing firm in his faith, raised his voice above the panic. "Do not be afraid! Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." As night fell, the pillar of cloud moved to their rear, becoming a barrier of thick darkness to the Egyptians, but a shining light to the Israelites, a divine curtain separating the hunted from the hunters. God prepared his grand finale. Then, at God's command, Moses stretched his hand out over the sea. All through the night, a strong east wind blew, and the waters began to move. The sea divided. It rose up on the left, forming a towering liquid wall. It rose up on the right, forming a towering liquid wall. A dry path emerged from the seabed, a corridor of salvation. The Israelites, their fear turning to awe, began their crossing. Men, women, children, and their livestock. As the last Israelites set foot on the far shore, the Egyptian army charged into the sea channel in hot pursuit. At the break of dawn, Moses stretched out his hand once more. The watery walls collapsed. Chariots, horses, soldiers swallowed by the sea. As the sun rose, the Israelites stood on the shore of freedom and sang a great song of praise.